Welcome, everyone. This is season 2 of the Suffer Well, Surrender to Rest in a Transition Season podcast series. And tonight is the night for episode 1. I am so excited that you all will be tuning in with us to watch this episode and just be a part of our journey where we're talking about surrendering to rest in a transition season. And I wanted to start off by talking about what suffer well means, because it was dropped in my spirit about a year and a half ago about suffer well. And what suffer well means, it means that when you're navigating a difficult circumstance, you're able to endure hardships with grace. It means to find purpose behind the adversity, behind the challenges. It's viewing the challenges as an opportunity for growth. The tests, the trials, the hardships that you may have faced is actually an invitation for expansion, is an invitation to develop resilience within yourself, hope for the future, refining your character, surrendering, and trusting God in the process. It means to rise when life or the enemy tried its hardest to break you down. It means not giving up in the process and finding your strength, power, and light. So tonight's episode, we're going to talk with a guest speaker who's going to do exactly that and share with us her power, how she was able to turn pain into power, how she was able to rediscover her inner strength. So I'm going to go ahead and bring her to the stage. Welcome, Marya. How are you?
Hi, Marya. It's so nice to be on here. I am wonderful today.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you, too. Thank you. It's an honor to be the first guest on this season.
Yes, and it's actually a full circle moment because I was a guest speaker for your talk show, Pain to Power. So it's just so amazing for you to come on my podcast series and to open it up for us. So thank you for that.
Thank you for inviting me.
All right, so I'm going to start off by reading your bio, and then we're going to just jump right into it. Marya Kazmi is the founder of Brown Girl Interrupting, which is a healing center platform rooted in storytelling, identity, and transformation. Born to Muslim immigrants from Pakistan and Bangladesh, she is a second-generation American whose work explores the intersection of culture, race, belonging, and coming home to self. With over 8 years of experience as a race and equity specialist in DEI, Marya blends academic frameworks with deeply personal insight shaped by her own life transitions, including the end of a 17-year marriage and a multi-year journey of healing and self-reclamation. Her writing and facilitation invite people to examine inherited narratives, unlearn limiting patterns, reclaim agency in their lives and leadership. Marya is an executive producer and host of Pain to Power, Leading with Love, where she curates conversations with artists, leaders, and change makers who have transformed personal pain into purpose. She is also the creator of Empowerment Unlocked, a signature course grounded in her return framework, offering practical tools for reflection, boundary setting, and identity-aligned living. Through her blog, podcast, courses, and speaking, Marya's work is an invitation to interrupt the stories we tell about ourselves and others so we can build more honest relationships, more humane leadership, and more liberated lives. That is amazing. I just love reading your bio. You have an amazing story to share. And we just read your amazing bio. When did you know it was time to make a change in your life?
So there's a lot of moments, but I would say I think the big moment for me was when I left my marriage. And I knew that I was ready because I have 4 children. That's not in my bio, but that's another thing I do is I have 4 children. And my fourth that I had was a girl. I have 3 boys and 1 girl. And when she was born, I think that was there was just this moment where I realized that the woman I wanted to be wasn't as a role model for her, and the woman I wanted her to be wasn't going to be possible if I stayed in the marriage that I stayed in. And so leaving my marriage really was ignited by having my daughter and recognizing who I wanted to be as a woman.
Mm. And that's amazing how, having children can allow us to see ourselves through our children, and what I'm hearing is that you were able to find strength through your daughter, to make that change. And I'm sure it was a very challenging change, that you had to make
Absolutely.
with that. Yes.
Mhm.
So after leaving your marriage, go ahead and share with us, what did you do after that? Did you find peace in your journey of becoming? Walk us through your journey a little bit.
Yeah. So I was married for 17 years, and when I left, Uh, I was really done, which oftentimes women are when they finally leave. They know that they're ready to leave. But what I hadn't done, to your question of was it easy to find my power? No, it wasn't. It was actually really hard because I didn't realize how much of it I lost
Mm,
until I had space from that marriage. And what I thought was just unhappy marriage and maybe a guy that didn't like me and still stayed married to me was so much deeper and so much more layered. And so it was a combination of one, recognizing how much pain I was sitting in and I had been sitting in, the stories I believed about who I was as a person, how what I was capable of, who I was as a mother, who I was as just a, as a who I was when I was a wife. And then it was also a lot of accountability of myself and what I
mhm,
allowed in my life. So all of that was really hard. And for me, the added element of having 3 pretty much kind of teenage boys, um,
mm,
experiencing that with me and thinking that I was taking them away from harm, that they really didn't see as harm. So there was like this extra element of me trying to heal, but also being harmed at the same time because
mhm,
forces were working against what I was trying to cultivate as like our new peace.
mhm. Right. And it definitely is hard. You know what I mean? Unimaginable type of challenge when it's you and a family. You know what I mean? So it's if even though the family is breaking up, but it's you had to find, like you said, your healing because you had to learn and unlearn what was, where you wanted to be, as you continued in your life. So kudos for doing that. I know it was a hard decision, but just looking at where you are now, what was birthed in you from the pain that you carried, so how were you able to manage your emotions during that time? Did you hold, how did you hold space for yourself? And when did you know you were ready to begin with sharing publicly your story?
Mm. So holding space for myself was really hard because there
Mm-hmm.
was a lot of unlearning that had to happen. I think it took me a lot of years before I really understood what that meant. That's an interesting thing to say. I love how you phrase that, right? Holding space for ourselves. I think for me, the main thing was I started therapy. So I was talking to someone, but also I started with like really simple things of like, well, what do you like, Marya? Like, what do you like to do? What kind of chips are your favorite? Like, you've been doing everything for everybody else and for everyone else, and you lost yourself somewhere in that. So,
Mm-hmm.
starting really small was part of my holding space for myself. And then repeat your second question.
Oh, yes. The second question was, when did you know you were ready to start sharing it publicly with
Oh,
others?
yeah. So I think what I realized, going back to like what I was saying, is that, like, it wasn't easy. And so part of holding space for me also was that I wrote a lot of, I journaled, and I've always been a journaler, like always,
Mhm.
always, always in my life. From like the time I was like in probably middle school, I started like writing notebooks and notebooks of things, right? And I never consider myself a writer, but I wrote, you know. And then I think in this healing space, there was a moment where it was around COVID, when a lot of things happened for a lot of people in 2020, when I started to really write about the journey. I wrote about the specific pain moments, the moments when I was lost as a mother and I didn't know how to get control back in my life and get my kids to want to be with me, or like I was healing from like, well, what do I believe about myself? Am I really
Mhm.
capable? Am I not capable? And I started writing, and there was something in me that called, and I think a lot of it was, in addition, and you mentioned this in my bio, right, is that I work in race and equity. So for the last, now over a decade, I've been working in this idea of examining race and examining culture. And that year when I separated, and I had done a lot of heavy work in culture, and what I realized is I don't even know what my own culture is. I absorbed into a marriage culture. I absorbed into someone else's culture, and I've lost a lot of pieces of myself. So I started to create Brown Girl Interrupting. And with that, I realized that there was a story to be told about healing. And Brown Girl Interrupting became my blog. And I started writing and sharing. And it really didn't actually start with like, let me tell the whole world. It was like, let me
Right.
write this stuff. It's helping me to process everything, but it's also like giving me a lesson at the end of this to think about what I've
Mhm.
gained from this, what I've learned from this, and how I'm moving forward. So it wasn't just sitting in the pain, but it was like also trying to think of, but what did I learn? How do I get something from this? And I shared it with like 5 friends. And I made this little tiny website, and those friends would share it with other people, and then other people. And that's how it grew. But that's when the moment when I was like sharing my story. Um,
Mhm.
and I also was like sharing it just through talking on social media and like kind of being the influencer, I guess, who talked about her emotions very vulnerably and honestly,
Yeah.
on Instagram. And, it was only Instagram at that time, I think. And that was it. So but that was it. It was me just trying to heal myself through saying the words out loud and
Mhm.
validating them for me. But what ended up happening, and I know we're going to go into this, is that it became validation for a lot of other people.
Yes. Yeah. Mhm. And I can, relate to your story as far as like, writing, because there's healing that comes from journaling and just writing it out loud, and it takes so much courage. That was my word for 2025, courage, because it's hard to publicly talk about, even like people outside of your circle, to share, the trials that you may have been going through, the hardships, and to journal it out loud. Journal it is just a way of releasing,
Absolutely. And
so
the shame that comes with like, I accepted that, like I let that happen. Like there's a lot. Yeah.
mhm,
And it was definitely a release, and yes, that's
mhm.
exactly like you and I share that story of the creative release that also heals at the same time.
Absolutely. And like what you're doing, is making room for other people to share their story also, So I'm learning as I continue on the journey, because we started off in healing, but now it's like, like you said, what did we learn from this? How can we evolve from where we was when we first started our healing journey in the transition? So when we're wanting a change, wanting a shift, it's messy. It's very messy, especially in the middle. You know what I mean? And it's like, what am I doing? And, all these thoughts keep running in our mind, like, am I making the right decision? How is this going to affect my children in the long run? But I just feel like when you stand strong on something and stand firm on what you believe in, even when other people can't see it, then it's like knowing, you have that faith to just keep going. So thank you for that, for your courage.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Mm-hmm. Yes. So we talked a little bit about like what was birthing you as a result of the transition, and you talked about how you started the talk show Paid to Power. So you started off as a blog. So when did you know you wanted to move forward and expand into the talk show?
So I think the validation, what ended up happening is that I would meet people that I hadn't seen in years that would be like, oh, I read your piece and it really resonated with me. And I also have had this challenge. And when I left my marriage and my relationship with my kids or my healing journey itself, and then they would share their stories with me. And then I would hear so many more stories of individuals who had their own paths to healing. And and it did lead me, like at that same time, in that time, I also was asked to be a co-host of a podcast. That podcast was called Better Minds Interrupting, with Trinita Palmer. And she invited me on as like, she was the spiritual guru. And I was just kind of like sharing, here's my path of spirituality and what I'm going through and the pain and the healing. Right. So I'm processing all of it. But I think from that was where I felt, to your point, courage, right? This courage that like, I can take this another step, because what I believe is that there are so many stories of people who are taking their pain, but are turning it into power. And then they're doing these transformational things to help others to heal. And that is a really important story to be told. And for me, it wasn't just telling that story. It was like, what's the story of you to get there? And that was my curiosity when I started this, was understanding the story behind the person that led them to the journey and the tools that they gathered along the way that they're now helping others to help to get through their craft, their creativity, right? Through your writing, through your poetry, through art, through music, through business, whatever way people were doing it. And that was where Pain to Power started. And actually, it's pretty exciting because I started literally 4 years ago on January 9th of 2022. And this Sunday, I am celebrating and airing my 100th episode.
Wow, that's amazing. Congratulations.
Thank you. It is super exciting. And it has been such a journey of growth and learning and people and networking and just the way that life keeps unfolding. But it started with really, I wanted to, it goes back to critical race theory and the idea of counter storytelling. And I think this was my way of counter storytelling, because what I really try to be intentional about is bringing people whom others may not know and understand their story the same way, or make even assumptions of what they think they know about someone, and having them truly share who they are in their multifaceted dynamics. So that we build community through understanding one another and through the tools of taking our struggles and turning them into our strengths.
Yes. And I just loved how you just shared, we build community, because there is healing that comes from community. So often people feel isolated and feel alone when they are in a journey, and they suffer in silence. They wear this mask and they feel like nobody understands them. And that's how I felt for years. I also felt lost. I felt stuck, because maybe I just wear a mask that I have everything together, but behind closed doors, I'm crying every night because I don't have solutions. And all I'm doing is just praying for change, but didn't have the tools, like you mentioned, to move forward out of the situation when I was in my transition season. And I don't know about you, but were you like an outgoing person? Were you already like on social media often and like already like on stages or doing what you were doing? Did it come naturally, or did you have to do a lot of work to get there?
So it was a combination of things. I think naturally, I was always the kid who loved a camera in front of her. Right? Like I'm not one who shies away from that. But at the same time, I'm also not one who ever saw herself as the center of anything. Right. Like I was always on the sidelines. Like I loved it, but I was never called into it. I was never the one that was the voice that people were like, yeah, you should speak or you should do this, right? Like and I lived in a family where there were always people who were keynote speakers and someone who spoke at somebody's wedding, and like I was surrounded by very outgoing, very social people. So I tended to always shrink in those environments. But there was something about this that was different. And I think to your point, like we do need community, right? And when I think about it, like I think that sometimes for many of us, community might start, and even in this day and age, right, is that sometimes community is not in person. Sometimes community is built in the safety of turning on your phone and just speaking into it, or turning on your computer and speaking into it. And I think for me, that started to open me up. Plus with the writing, right? So I had been writing about it, so I'm already saying everything, but now I'm talking about it too. And I was comfortable speaking, and my job is speaking, so that does help. Like I am on stages to some extent in that I facilitate spaces and conversations all the time. So I was learning those things, but to talk about me personally was not something I was doing as easily or as often. But there was something about it that was actually really easy. There's something about it that's always been easy. Because I think what happens to me is that you just get the most authentic Marya. Like that's me. Like I'm not putting on a show. I'm not telling you something that makes me so great and wonderful. It's like, hey, I'm broken. Broken. And but I'm healing. Like, but that brokenness isn't all that's about me, right? I also have joy, and I also have things I'm working on, and I'm also trying to be a good mom, but like here's the real me. And there was something so liberating about being able to be the real me, because for 17 years in my marriage, and probably even before that in my childhood, really thinking about it, I always pulled back the real me. And or it was suffocated. One of them, right? Like for 17 years, it was suffocated. It was feared. It was avoided. So yeah.
Yeah. And I'm glad you shared that, because with your, professional background, it's like you're on stages, but you weren't felt like you were supposed to be like the center of attention. But then again, it came, very organic and natural. And I'm learning that like people respond more when you are authentic, But for me, and that's one thing I love about my journey, is that like everybody has their own timing, when not necessarily to get there, but like where they see themselves. And I think it comes with once you know your identity, or when you release an identity that no longer serves you, because I held on to an identity based on societal expectations, or based off of like my family community. And I'm like, I had to grieve that older version of me and know that in my healing journey with change, it starts within, So with the challenges, yes, it's challenging, but I'm learning that like the best part of our journey is revealed, like our strengths, our compassion, our characters being changed, and for myself, like even though I was a writer, a poet, I never called myself a poet, and I remember saying that like I became a writer by accident, but I'm learning now that nothing happens by accident, and I kept trying to resist it for like well over 10 years, but now I'm just like, okay, it keeps coming back to me. I keep getting tugs in my spirit to talk about healing, and like what I've learned on my journey, how it changed me for the better. I was seeking change, seeking truth. So you have helped me to, on my journey by you sharing your posts on social media also. So it's, and one thing for me is like, it's a practice, we're also learning how to move forward with grace, because like I said, growth and healing is not linear. I loved how you said that, like on your journey, you're talking about healing, but there's also moments of joy. There's also moments of, finding light even in the darkness, so there's a lot of beautiful moments that come with this journey.
Absolutely. And it's worth the journey, right? It's worth it. But I love what you just said about being called to something, because I think that's it. Like, it's our purpose. And
Mhm.
um, oftentimes pain exists in our life, not because life is happening to us, but life is happening for us. And I think sometimes that's what I've learned through my show and through the people I've talked to and through the work that I do, is
Mhm.
that it's figuring out what's the purpose of this pain
Mhm.
for me to do something with this, whether it's growth that's just internal, whether it's sharing it with someone else, whether it's just, taking a new step in a new direction, right? Like, there's a purpose to it.
Yes. There's definitely a purpose to it, even when we don't know it at that moment.
Yeah.
But there is purpose in what we're going through, you know? And I loved
Yeah.
how you said, like, what is the lesson learned? You know, I don't like to call it mistakes. You may have heard that too. Like, I've made so many bad mistakes when I was in my 20s, when I thought I knew everything. But I don't call it mistakes as I get older and more wiser. I call it just life lessons. And what do I need to learn so that way, if I was in a situation like that, similar to when I was in my 20s, that I'm more aware of it, you know? So it comes with us in the journey. Like, we also develop that wisdom, you know, and discernment.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
Absolutely. And they're life lessons, right? But it's hard when you're in it to feel like it's a life lesson. We often
absolutely.
have been told, and that's what pain is looked at, is that it's happening to us, right? Like, there's
Mm-hmm.
something that we didn't do that's putting this in our life, or it's the test that we're being given. But it's really not just a test. Like, I think it's just part of our story. And
Yeah,
you never know where that story is going to lead you. Because
absolutely.
oftentimes people do ask me that. They'll be like, do you feel like there was a purpose to what you went through, right? And it's hard to think
Mhm.
like 17 years, almost 2 decades of your life that were painful and hurtful, had a purpose. But when I look at my life in the last 8 years and what I've developed, what I've built, the community around me, the healing that I've done and I've helped others do, there was a purpose.
Mhm. Absolutely. There's definitely a purpose with it. And when you are, you know, in a transition and you're able to like reflect back to where you were, you know, 17 years ago, and that's a question that this is a perfect layway for that. What is an advice that you give your younger self? Maybe 17, even 10 years ago, before you really started to do the inner work. What advice would you tell yourself?
Hmm. I definitely trust myself more.
Mm,
Trust myself more and let go of trying to control the outcomes and think that there's one story that I needed to live.
mm-hmm,
But I think the big one is like trust myself more and give myself grace in that time, right? I was hard on myself always, and I think I never trusted my
mm,
instinct or trusted that I was capable enough, that I was smart enough, and it led me to then be in spaces and places and in relationships um, that that leveraged that lack of my trust in myself.
mm-hmm,
So,
mm. Yeah. And that's, you know, an eye-opening, you know, statement to just trust yourself more, because I feel like as women, we naturally have this intuition, you know, but we ignore it because perhaps culturally, you know, in your bio you said you grew up Muslim. So it's
mm,
like, you know, based on the culture, maybe they, you know, really believe strongly in staying in marriages. And my thing is like, when you're going through, you know, circumstances, it's okay to change directions, especially if it doesn't serve you, you know, and it's so hard walking away and saying enough is enough, you know. And I think that's probably why my spirit keeps, you know, telling me to come and do the podcast series, because that's where I feel like we are lost in that process, because we may walk away, but then we come back because it's
mhm.
familiar, you know. So how do we find that strength? And that's why I love the title, is Rediscovering Your Inner Strength, right?
Yeah,
So it's
absolutely.
just so intentional, you know.
Absolutely, right. We have to rediscover because we have it in us, but it gets lost, right? Like,
Mhm.
we are told things about ourselves. And so for me, I think like a lot of it, and as I've looked at it and thought about it a lot over the years, is that it was almost this idea. I think we have patterns. We're socialized into certain patterns. And for me, one of the patterns that I know I've been undoing a lot that has to do with controlling things is the idea of perfectionism. And so for me, it wasn't, yeah, yes, Islam and like a lot of religions, doesn't want you to divorce, but it wasn't because of religion that I did it.
Okay.
It was more so for me. And I'm saying for me, right? Everybody has different things and different stories. But for me, I didn't get divorced, one, because I thought I loved him, but because there was something in me that was like, oh, I can do this. I decided to marry this person, and that was a lot. Like, it was, I married him through a lot of people saying don't, right? And a
Wow.
lot of pushback
Mhm.
from many people. Like, this was not something that was like a an accepted story, right? But I committed to it, and then now I have 3 kids, and now I have 4 kids, and like there was something in me that made me think I must follow through with this thing. And if anybody can do it, I can do it because I can prove I can do it. And that goes back to like some of my healing with my ego. Like I had to realize that I was trying to really control a lot of things, staying in the
Mhm.
marriage, but then also the way I left it with my kids and how I transitioned them out of that. Right. But I think that like that piece of we all have different reasons that we
Mhm.
stay and we all have different reasons that we leave. And I think that trust in yourself is knowing yourself so well that you recognize in any decision you're making, are you making it for you or are you making it for somebody else?
Mm.
Is it because of the expectation? Is it because of the religion? Is it because you think that by doing this, you've proven that you're this person who's so strong and so resilient? Or is it truly because it makes you happy? It
Right.
gives you joy, it gives you peace, it's fulfilling, it's gentle and kind, and oftentimes we make the decisions not based on that, not based on what we need. So when I say trust myself, I think those are the layers of it, right? It's knowing myself to be able to also trust myself.
Mhm. Mhm. And that was just beautifully, explained to be able to not only trust yourself, but know yourself, and I feel like you mentioned, like, we have like all of these like different like emotions, whether it's fear, shame of walking away from something, so we have to sit in the discomfort. And so often, whether in society and based on the situation, people just try to stay like busy to avoid sitting with their feelings, you know what I mean?
Busy,
Or
we get into addictions, we get into
yes.
and I did that. There were times where I would default to, well, then I'm gonna go out and hang out with friends and I'm gonna we fill the gaps to not feel
Mhm.
the discomfort, to
Right.
not sit in the discomfort. But that is such a big part of healing is
Mhm.
we have to sit in discomfort and get comfortable with discomfort.
Yes. Get comfortable with being uncomfortable and to ask yourself those self-reflective questions like you mentioned, like, what am I supposed to learn during this process? How can I get out of it? What resources do I need? And the fact that you're able to find the strength and to find the strength to get there, not only did you get there, but now you're on the other side of that and helping other people in their journeys. So one of the common things that I'm hearing is like a phrase is I had to learn myself. So do you feel like the person that you was 10, 15, 17 years ago is a different version of who you are now? And I'm sure, is it a better version of who you are now?
Oh, absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. And a lot of it is knowing my own worth. I definitely 10, 15 years ago did not know my worth at all, did not
Mm-hmm.
know that I had value in my worth, there was value in my ideas and my thoughts, right? That I made good decisions. So knowing my worth is a big piece that I've learned. And when we know our own worth, we then are more discerning about who gets access to that.
Yes.
and how much access, and when do they get the access, and what is the boundary when that access needs to be denied, even if they had that access before.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
that has, and I'm still in a growing process, because healing is an evolution. It's not a journey. It's not like there's no end
Right.
space, right? We're constantly evolving and understanding things. But I think even that, like, I'm so willing to accept change. Um, you said your word for the year 2025 was courage. Mine has been acceptance.
Mm.
Acceptance that life, I mean, I have 3 grown children, and 10 years ago, I would have think that, oh, I'm a failure as a mother because they didn't take this path or they didn't do this thing. And part of my acceptance is like, no, they're amazing people. They have
Mhm.
their own path, they have their own stories, right? And it's not for me to control. So there's like, these are the things, like the things of like just knowing myself, knowing my value, but also letting go of control is something that
Mhm.
I was, that perfectionism in me, right? Like I
Mhm.
wanted to control things. And I thought I could. I thought if I did enough work, if I changed enough, if I was who everybody wanted me to be, then I could control the outcomes of what was going to happen in my life. And that's not the case. And I do believe, like, today, particularly like today, I know that I'm constant evolution. And maybe a month ago, I was in a different place with that. Like I knew it, but I know
Mhm.
it even deeper today.
Yeah.
Every day I'm doing some kind of work to understand myself and the world around me and the world I exist in and the life I exist in better.
Absolutely. And I just love how you just mentioned as far as that, like when we are evolving, it's ongoing. It's not a one-time thing. We constantly have to renew our mindset whenever we're filled with doubts, whenever we're filled with like weakness, and one thing on my journey is that like I have close friends, sister friends that I can like call on, or they call me and they can recognize me and like say, you know what? They remind me of my strengths, and I just love
Mm.
that because it's that community. And I didn't have that when I started in the beginning of my journey. I didn't have that community and I felt so alone. So with me, also learning about who I'm becoming, right, on my journey. And it's definitely not the same person 10 years ago, but then I loved her, but she's not here. And that's okay because so often on our journey, we are experiencing loss, and not just loss in a marriage. It could be loss of ourselves, loss of identity, so many different versions of loss and grief. And it's like,
Absolutely.
we focus so much on that pain, on what we're losing, that we don't have the perspective to see what is ahead, And I think when I was reflecting recently on how to define suffer well, because I'm like, why is that word phrase keep dropping in my spirit? And it's like, because we're able to embrace this path that we're on. We're not saying that it's easy, but we're able to embrace it and have hope for the future. And that's where what I'm hearing that you're saying is like, I have hope for the future. And I know that I know my values now. I know my worth. Mara 10, 15 years ago probably didn't know that. And I loved how you even talked about having boundaries. I was a people pleaser. I used to have people just walking all over me all the time in different environments when it comes to work, when it comes to friends, acquaintances, and I was even in personal relationships, romantic. And I had to say, you know what? This is not for me anymore. When I was younger, I used to just allow it because I thought that was what I was supposed to do. But now I'm like, I'm okay. This is not acceptable, and I love that you just said it's about acceptance, because when I was younger, I would just quiet myself because I wanted to be accepted, to be in groups, and just like subconsciously I'm shrinking, so I feel like going back to what you said earlier, when people would ask you, do you think this was like on purpose? And nothing is wasted, like I shared earlier, but I feel like we needed the shaking to take place, the little bit of that chaos to take place in our lives. So that way, what was buried underneath, the purpose can come out, our strength can come out. So, yeah.
Definitely, definitely.
Mm-hmm. Okay. This is a great conversation. How are you feeling?
Good. It's great. Thank you. I appreciate this. And
Yes.
you're reminding me of so much of this this journey. And I do really like that idea of suffer well, because I think it aligns very much with pain to power, because that's the whole idea, is that
Mhm.
people have been turning their struggles into their strengths
Mhm.
to to heal themselves, and then take it to that next level of healing others too, right? Like, because when we suffer well, just like the idea that you can't fill from an empty cup, right?
Mhm.
As I think when we suffer well and we go through our own challenges and we make it through, we then create a faster pathway for someone else who might not have to suffer as much to suffer
Right.
well.
Mhm.
And that's huge. And what you're doing with your platform, and what has been with Pain to Power, is just that, is like, sometimes we just need the permission and
Mhm.
then some of the roadmap to know that we don't have to sit in things as long as we do. We don't have to go back to that
Mhm.
relationship or that marriage or that dynamic with friends that has been harming us, right? We can choose ourselves and still be whole and feel whole in it.
Right. Absolutely. And choosing ourselves, choosing that joy, because if we go back, there's a reason why it ended. And we have possibly gone back to those relationships or even friendships, not just marriages, but we're like, why am I back in this friendship when it wasn't like, serving me anymore? Like we've grown apart, and that's okay because
And
life
the
that happens.
Absolutely. And I think, honestly, the more you heal and the more people that you have around you who are healed, because you can tell when people have not done their work
You can
to
tell, yes.
understand themselves, but you become more discerning and you lose people. Like, that's one thing I talk about a lot, and that comes up a lot in many conversations, is that when you are changing and the person that you used to be was beneficial to the other people around you, and
Yeah.
now your boundaries are actually taking away something they had access to that was easy for them to have access to,
Mhm.
people don't like that. You
Mhm.
lose people. Your
Mhm.
boundaries start to really filter who is
Mhm.
meant to be on the path with you, because not everybody can come
Yes.
with you. I've learned that for certain. Not everybody
Absolutely.
comes with you, and they're
It's
not
a,
meant to.
it's a hard pill to swallow, a hard truth to accept in the beginning because perhaps that person was with you from like childhood and seen so many different stages in your life, and it's like, okay, but they're not meant to go with you on a certain level of your journey because when you are moving to a new level, it calls for, more intentionality, and like you said, your boundaries become more stronger and you have to cut that out. You know what I mean? And sometimes you don't even have to say anything. They just fall off, And
Yeah.
that's one thing I'm learning too. And it's amazing that you said that because last year for one of the episodes, we talked about why endings are necessary when you're in a season of transition. It's okay to end things because when you're ending something, you are actually, it's an invitation, it's a gateway to make room for what's to come, but
Right.
you don't have that perspective because we're only thinking about like right now, today in the present. And it's kind of hard
Absolutely.
to see like what's to come, but I think that's when we lean on like our faith or the higher power because it's like, okay, we don't know what tomorrow is going to bring, but we know that like it's going to be better than where we are right now, so change is hard, but you have to pick and choose what change you want. Do you want to stay in it or do you want to see what happens outside?
Absolutely. And I'm going to say that, like, I think is a really important example, because it's not always so cut and dry. It's not always just
Mhm.
something you can leave. So I have 4 children, as I said, right? So with my boys, one of the things that was my big boundary, that was a hard one for me to swallow, to do, but to also, like, to for others to accept that I did, was I did stop. I put up a boundary of, when there was so much harm coming from them, to distance myself from them. To, I'm always their mother, I'll always be here, but I wasn't reaching out, I wasn't making the effort anymore. And that's a very hard place as a parent, to really trust that it's possible that it will get better. I think we think our kids at teenage years and the way they hate us is like what it's always going to be, right?
Yeah,
Like, but I will say, the moment that I let go and chose myself, I really actually also created space. So sometimes it's not just falling away. It's just maybe it's not their moment that they're healing. Like they have to heal their own way.
Yeah.
And when I chose myself, I chose space for them to find what they needed to come to the place that they needed to be to heal. And as I watch my boys now from where we were 8 years ago when I first separated, and the anger,
Yeah.
the frustration, and all the things that they were feeling towards me, but towards life, towards the situation, they found their healing in their ways. And now we have the most amazing relationship. There are wonderful, wonderful men in my life. They are the men in my life, and they take care of me, and they love me, and they see me, and they value me authentically for me, not for someone I have to show up to be for them or do for them. But that wouldn't have happened had I not put up that boundary.
Right, right. And boundaries are just, it's so an important aspect when it comes to healing, and that's letting people know that what they did before is just, it's not acceptable, but then finding, again, the courage, finding that strength to speak up and to say, you know what, you don't have to just always show up, you can just be exactly who you are when you're choosing you and putting you first, so I love
And
that.
the courage to walk away from things, because it's hard to walk away from friendships,
It's
children,
hard.
exes, whatever it is, right? So that requires us to have courage and to give ourselves grace in the process, right?
So another question that I have, and I think you had already shared a little bit about holding space for yourself, and also you touched on being able to hold space for others, So starting with your blog and sharing it with others in your community, how has your LLC, how has it expanded? And tell us a little bit about like what you are currently working on. Where can we find you?
So Brown Girl Interrupting is really, the goal of it is to provide healing and resilience, and for us to recognize and know and come home to ourselves, because I think that's what many of us lose. And that happens in many different ways. So I consult and have individual conversations with individuals in coaching and consulting and helping support individual growth. But I also can do that for organizations, and for larger spaces, and thinking of how does knowing ourselves and healing ourselves and recognizing our own individual power impact the way we lead others in more authenticity, in relational building, in humanity and centering humanity. So that's a lot of my work. But the other really big piece that I've been working on is I developed a course called Empowerment Unlocked.
Okay.
And it's a 5-week guided course that specifically is taking people through the process of identifying those patterns. So some of the things, like I talked about, my own perfectionism, my own ego getting in the way of trying to control the outcome for my children, those are all things I've been socialized, whether it's through my family, through just society around us, through my own belief of what I think I'm supposed to be. I have been socialized. And my goal is for us to identify what are some of those things that we've been socialized into that we don't even realize, but they're showing up in our lives and having us sacrifice parts of ourselves, and to reclaim the true story of who we are beneath the other expectations and ideas. And that's the goal of the course. People walk away with tools, they walk away with community, which is, again, like you said, a really important part of healing. And they walk away with just a better understanding of self, which is the goal, is just knowing ourselves better builds then that self-trust and that ability to see the possibility of change, the possibility of so many opportunities around us. So that course starts January 22nd.
Oh, it
Please
starts.
go and enroll very soon. Yes, January
Okay.
22nd. It's 5 weeks with me, guided in community, and only $49 until January 11th, and then the price will go up. So make sure that you, those of you who are listening, please go and enroll. I don't know if I send you the links, Mia, and then you can put them wherever you're going to put them. But
Yes, please share it with
or
me.
definitely, and follow me. Follow me because you'll see the links in all of my places. I'm on TikTok, I'm on Facebook, I'm on Instagram, Brown Girl Interrupting. I'm also on Substack as a writer, so I still continue to write and share my story and my learnings and my process, including a recent series I started all about the empowerment unlock framework that I developed called Return, and how we return to ourselves in all the pieces of remembering and examining and reclaiming and all those components. So Substack, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and you'll find the link to Empowerment Unlocked in there, as well as the link to Pain to Power, so you can watch the show and learn some tools from that. And just follow me because I continue to always post, and I'm always going to have new things. I'm hoping to have some new live events happening soon. So if you're in the
Yes, gotta see
area,
you.
because I am just always looking for different ways that we come together and heal, or individually heal, and find our voice that that we have lost many times for many of us.
Yes. And I just love what you're doing, like, and I just love what was birthed in you. And this is so necessary, for people to join, to learn about themselves, but then also to walk away with tools, So, and I feel like we are our first students, so everything that we are putting out there, we had to go through it step by step. You know what I mean? So that way we can really share it with others, so.
Absolutely. And this course was really birthed on just that. Everything I've been talking about with you is what I've been doing in my life and how I've learned through that, and through my knowledge of race and equity, through my knowledge of facilitation. I've taken a lot of different skill sets and knowledge that I have and pulled it together to create this course. Because, yeah, it was life experience that really helped me to know how to now guide others through the same journey that I know many people are in right now, whether it's manifested in the same type of story or a different story, but it's the same journey of healing many times for most of us.
Yeah. And being able to find your voice, and finding a space that's where you can be free to share your voice, because I feel like oftentimes people shrink because they don't feel like that community was a safe space, or they don't feel the acceptance, the love, so I love that you're, doing this. And yes, I love that you're still, have space for enrollment for people to join, because like I said,
I
it's
definitely do. It's going to pull up quick, so make sure you get that spot
yes,
in. But
sign up, you guys.
definitely, and let everybody know that you know. And yeah, so absolutely. And thank you for saying that. And I love that you are doing this in your second season of this show, because you are creating a space again for more people to share their journeys of how they are suffering well, and then helping others in their transition season. So that's powerful, Mia.
Yes, yes. And before we go, I want you to tell the audience, what is a quote or inspirational thought that you would like to share with others who may be in a transition season right now? What is something that you would like to leave with them?
I had a list of things I was going to share with you, and then I don't have it in front of me. But what I'm going to say is, I think the thing that for me that's grounding me every day right now in this transition season of, again, when a new transition of many different things in life, is that every day is filled with infinite possibilities. So when we trust ourselves and we trust that we're going to be okay, and that the universe and the environment and whatever spiritual power you adhere to, that you follow, is going to take care of you when you feed into yourself, I really believe that anything can happen in your life. And it's come up for me. I mean, I didn't think that Pain to Power would ever turn into what it is, where I'm sitting on your podcast now, right? And sharing my story, and I have my course, and I have my work, and I have my 100th episode, right? Like, these things I never could have imagined. So when we let go and we just recognize and know that there are infinite possibilities as soon as we wake up every morning, and we believe that, they come towards us.
Yes. And it's about the alignment, and that's my word for this year. Normally, I don't come up with words unless like it's like a repeater, you know. So like in
Yeah.
my spirit, so like last year, I kept hearing in my spirit courage. This year is about alignment, you know, because when you are letting go of that control, letting go of like so far ahead. Oftentimes we're looking like, oh my God, how am I going to get there? What am I going to do? So we're like filled with so much of that anxiety and that stress. But like, it's
Yeah.
not meant to happen all in like that one day, you know? So it's like in a continuous evolving, continuous transition. And not all transitions are negative, but sometimes it's what's necessary to get us to where we need to be in life, you know? So,
And to that point, it's so important that we look at things in the growth space, not like,
yes.
so every step, every new level of something you've uncovered about yourself, every new growth, every new win that you have, give yourself the credit, give yourself the flowers, and recognize and
Mhm.
sit in it. I think sometimes we are so focused on that big goal we want to attain that we
Mhm.
lose that, and we lose ourselves, because then it starts to eat at us like, well, I'm not successful, or I didn't do
Yeah.
this. And I've definitely been there many, many, many times.
Me
Many,
too. Me
many
too.
times, right? But I will say one of the things that I'm working on very actively right now is just appreciating growth in those transition moments, because it could be very incremental, but it's growth.
Yeah. And small growth to us, it may seem like small, but to somebody else, it's like a major milestone accomplishment, you know?
Absolutely. No, that's true
So,
too, right? It's all in context and
yes.
perspective.
Giving yourself that credit, giving yourself the grace, you know, and just keep going, you know. And again, suffer well is about not giving up in the process, you know, thinking about what your why is, you know.
Yeah.
So, I love that. Thank you so
Yeah.
much. And I know you are celebrating your birthday. So thank you and
Tomorrow is my
happy
birthday. I'm very
birthday.
excited. Thank you so
Yeah.
much. I have treated myself in this acceptance, and actually I think I'm going to go with a word too. I think limitless is my 2026 word. Limitless.
I
The
love
world is
that.
limitless, and so in my
Yeah.
limitless world, I am definitely treating myself to a beautiful birthday.
Yes, as you should. And I'm so glad our path has crossed 3 years ago and almost 3 years ago. And I'm pretty sure our path will cross again in person. So I'm going to continue to support you online and in person when you have your in-person events.
Thank you. And I can't wait to see you there. And I can't wait to see how this podcast continues to grow and evolve. Can I say, and I didn't say this before, but I should have said this at the top of the show, is that I am truly honored because I've seen who your lineup is. And I'm like, oh,
Oh,
wow. Wow. I'm coming before all those amazing women and those amazing like artists and the things they're doing to help and heal. Like, this has been a true honor to be seen
mhm.
and asked to be a part of this and to open it up for you in this season, which I know is going to be amazing. And I look forward to continuing to following and watching. And please, those of you watching, make sure you follow me, Brown Girl Interrupting. I
Yes.
would love to add you to my community as well as Mia's community.
Yes, yes. And thank you all for viewing tonight's episode. Please come back next Thursday where we're going to talk about um, resting in the storm, healing through art. So we do have another episode 2, next Thursday at 7 p.m. live on YouTube. Thanks, you guys. Peace. Thank you, Myra. Have a good night.
Thank you.
All
Peace.
right. Bye-bye.